One more thing on the wheelbase. The wheelbase on this is a little bit short, and the reason is the actual Blazer, the tires are more biased toward the front and the rear, not so much toward the middle. This is again a result of the chassis that was used here, so it's likely that the wheelbase probably had about 10 more millimeters of space. Just wanted to bring that up. So right now we'll add oil to the shocks. To do this, I'm going to get my pliers. Actually, I'll get my aluminum pliers, not that this really matters. And we're just going to grab them gently and just kind of give them, there you go, a little bit of a twist, and they pop right off. There's a little ball joint there, and they pop right off. Same down here, there's a little ball joint, and I should have taken the tire off, but I didn't. So we'll just bend this up a little bit from the, I'm trying to grab it kind of toward the bottom because I don't want to bend the shock shaft. So that just pops right off. Here, oops, it's upside down now. Oh well. Here is our shock. We have to undo the eyelet right here at the bottom. And for that, I do want my aluminum pliers. So these are the shock pliers that I tend to use here. The thing is, these are pretty small, so I hope I can use them still. These are made out of aluminum, so it's a lot harder to mar the surface. And there's a little kind of rounded semicircle hole that they'll drop into, so we can kind of give it a little bit of pressure and spin that right off. The reason why you need these aluminum pliers is the shock shafts are hardened steel, and if you use a hardened steel set of pliers to hold them, you can damage the surface and make the shock leak. These are aluminum and significantly softer than the steel. Okay, the next step is a little odd. You got to pull off this little base piece right here, and usually, yeah, it kind of just pulls right off. Next, hold the shock body, and the top will just spin right off. Slide the shock shaft out. To assemble these, I find that my tiny tweezers are very helpful. So I'm going to grab the small O-ring here and just plop it in, kind of like that. I'm always so annoyed. Every other YouTube channel seems to be able to just use tweezers and have stuff stay put. I've never in my life had that happen. All right, okay, so that's in. Okay, so you have two of those. Push them in the top like that, okay? So before you put the cap back on, take a little bit of oil. This is some 15 weight, and just push it like that. You want the O-rings slippery. If they are not, when you put the shock shaft through, it's possible you could tear them. You also want to oil the shock shaft. So again, we'll just put a little bit here, just on the front where the threads are. And I'm going to grab it kind of like this and push the top down, and it just pops through. Next, once it's like this, the actual non-threaded part of the shaft is a little bit bigger. So grab the shock like this. You want to grab the part that pops off, the end cap and the body, and just push it through. Otherwise, I've had the cap pop off. Okay. And I'll carefully get my aluminum pliers. There we go. Completely removed. We can put the spring back on. Again, grab your aluminum pliers. If you don't have any of these, which I highly recommend, wrap your regular pliers in painter's tape. You can spin that back on. We're almost done. So with these larger O-ring, you'll wrap it around the top, okay? Seats very nicely. I'm going to put some oil in here. I have found, in my experience, the more oil you put into this thing here, at least these smaller shocks, the less effective they are. What I mean is that the car is usually quite a lot lighter, so it doesn't have the weight to initially get that shock shaft to flow through the oil, and it makes them very stiff. And I put about maybe 2 or 3 drops in here. Okay, I think that's all we need. Remember, this is a very, very small shock, so even a couple of drops of oil fill a lot of it. So the set comes with these little washers right here, if you can see that in my hand. I have been putting them here only because I don't think there's any other place for them to go. And the reason is, if you don't put this down here, I feel like it'll over compress the O-ring and cause it to leak. So that's what I've got. You can see the O-ring around the perimeter right there, just a bit, and heavily compressed still. And there we have it, your oil-filled shock. It has a decent feel to it. It definitely feels better than the non-oil-filled version. I pulled the front end off, and that's because you can see how orange the headlight bucket is, as well as the grill. So if we pop these out, I think the grill will just come out here. Oh my God, there it goes. If we just detail that up in some silver, and then we do this whole area in matte black, it'll give you a little bit more depth, and I think that'll be really nice. I would say do the same thing with the turn signal, but I actually think it looks probably better off this way. And with a couple of minutes, looking a lot better. I did end up pulling out those orange lenses, and I think it kind of gave it a cool metallic-y look. I just painted it silver behind there. It had this embossed ridge. Now, I'm almost positive that these trucks just had a plastic lens, like the real one, but I thought it gave it a bit of contrast, so I said, what the heck, let's just go ahead and do that. I really like it. You see that the headlight is now very silver. The grill has got that black depth to it. It looks a little glossy right now, I don't know if you can see that, but it's matte paint, so when it dries, it'll be flat. Before I take this for a spin, we can see that I've prototyped some new bumpers for this truck. And the production ones have come in. Now these are painted in a low gloss black, straight over the nylon. The yellow lamps are just little caps, you can see that. And those are printed in a polyjet, so these will be available from Shapeways. I'll have them on my mini factory as well, and you can see how it's gonna come out on an FDM. So it's gonna require some, a little bit of finishing work, but it will, look pretty decent. These were a really, really fast print, so they're kind of weak. And I just wanted these for test fitment. These are best printed on a resin SLA printer. To install them, take off the stock bumpers for the front and rear bull bars and just go ahead and replace them with the new ones. I wanted to point out a small feature. These little rectangular bosses here, they're designed to push the front end out. The factory plastic's kind of bowed inward, so I just went ahead and added that little feature to help to give the car a bit of a little better of a look in the front. So there we go, that'll go in there. Just press them on in, and now this piece here is perfectly straight. At the rear, you'll find a similar feature, but it's much larger and has that little triangular feature there, and that's just for rigidity. This is a really, really big bow in the plastic. So by putting this in and pushing it in place, we can see that that bow is effectively gone. Okay, so the rear bumper on, and now we'll focus on the roof basket. So these are my little cheap FDM test print, and this guy here, pretty much in. So there are a couple of holes here. So I'm going to drill that hole out with probably a 2.5 millimeter bit, and then we'll just put a screw straight in. And that's basically all you need there. The hole is a little over 2 millimeters. Because it's an M2 screw that holds this thing in place. Now, although there's really no M2 screws on this vehicle, at least readily accessible, the reason why I didn't bother going with an M2.5 like the car already uses is because those are a bit harder to find. All right, and there are our lights on the basket. Gives it a bit more depth, I think. Pop it on the back of the truck. Cool. All right, I'm gonna screw this down and put the body on. After all this tweaking and reviewing and messing about, let's take it for a drive.
Okay, I'll go back to finding stuff. Okay. All right.
I have had a chance to review quite a number of these FCX24 vehicles. I've had the Unimog, the Doug, we'll call it, and the Smasher. And although this is more in line with the Unimog and the Doug, and yes, it is called Doug, and I'm just making a joke here because the Power Wagon actually has a sticker that says Doug. Anyway, this one here by far is the most usable in terms of being a trail truck / crawler. The Smasher is on a completely different plane given the fact that that's, trying to be a monster truck. But what's interesting about this vehicle is I was able to take it on a walk, like at normal walking speed, and in second gear with like half throttle, this thing just buzzed right along. A lot of the other FMS cars really can't do that. The K10 and the Glacier and the Hilux simply don't have the speed to be able to drive at even a walking pace. This was able to do that. However, popping it into first gear gave this thing ability to have some very, very detailed and accurate driving to get it up and over some obstacles, some rocks, some tree roots and all that. And there is just a ton of articulation. I found that the tires maybe could use a bit more grip, but out of the box, it's really remarkable. But the real question is, do you want one? I think there's two schools of thought here. In the first instance, you're the kind of person that loves to modify the heck out of everything. Well, okay, fine. I'm one of those people. But in terms of what's available for the FCX24 at the moment, it pales in comparison to what's available for the Axial SCX24, right? Yeah. That thing is insane. This is more of an out of the box. I'm either new to the hobby or I just want something that works straight away. For what this is available for, it's pretty much turnkey. On top of that, this is a hard body. RC four-wheel drive has some hard body, smaller, I think those are 1/18th. And again, this is more or less 1/18 scale. Functionality wise, I think this guy is hard to beat. All I did really was put oil on the shocks. That's my only mechanical modification to this thing here, and it behaved beautifully. That part where it's bouncing over the cobbled road, I mean, it really just kind of soaked up the vast majority of that stuff. So if you do like to modify the heck out of your RC cars, maybe this is not the best path forward because, again, at the moment anyway, there's really not that much available for it. FMS does have a lot of mods for this thing, but again, we're comparing that to the SCX24. That thing's on a whole separate level. But that said, there's really not that much that this car needs. On the other side of the coin, you don't want to do a damn thing. You just want to buy the car and drive it. I can't imagine that there's anything on the market that will beat this thing in terms of its quality electronics, the pre-painted sensational body, the 2-speed gearbox, the outstanding tires, the portal axles, even the lithium polymer battery, which at a walking pace lasted me over 25 minutes. And that was only because I made it back home. The main drawback to this entire car is the size of the wheel arches. They look goofy. The Chevy Blazer does not have these proportions. I don't like that the wheels protrude. But the thing is, even if you're hardcore into scale, this thing does strike a very, very reasonable balance between a scale hard body and a fully functional turnkey off-road trail truck. To me, the thing is a steal. I hope you've all liked some of my modifications. I hope this review was helpful. And whether or not you do go forward with the K5, if you think that there's a great alternative for this one here that I'm not aware of, if you think that nothing beats this, if you think that the SCX24 is the greatest thing since sliced bread, let me know down in the comments. You know, I can only review so many cars. I don't have everything, and I'd really like to know what you think, and that'll definitely help me figure out where to go from this vehicle. Remember that all the links are in the description for the roll bar lights, the bull bar, where to get the car from. There's also a link in the description to the FariRC website where you can get upgraded and replacement parts. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.